probably thinking, where do I even begin?
Yeah.
But don't worry, get ready for some aha moments
Ah.
because we're going to unpack the essentials in a way that is actually fun and insightful and get you taking action like today.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, find budgeting really restrictive, but I like to see it as like a roadmap to freedom.
Ooh, I like that. Roadmap to freedom.
Yeah.
So where does this journey begin? Our sources all agree that step one is tracking your income. It sounds basic, but you know there's more to it than meets the eye, right?
Absolutely. You can't build a house without a solid foundation.
Right.
It's the same thing with your budget. You need to know exactly how much money you have coming in from all sources. Your paycheck, side hustles, maybe you have some investments, even, that royalty check from that poem you published in college. It's all crucial data for your financial blueprint.
You're so right. I used to think that, tracking income was just about like my 9 to 5 salary. But then I remembered, oh yeah, I have like a few small investments, that generate a little bit of passive income. It wasn't much.
Yeah.
But realizing I had those extra funds coming in really shifted my perspective. It's like finding hidden treasure.
Yeah, exactly. And those seemingly small amounts can add up over time, especially if you invest them wisely.
Okay, so we've got our income sources all mapped out. Now what?
Now it's time to take a closer look at where all that hard-earned cash is flowing out.
Okay.
We're talking about tracking expenses.
All right, time to face the music and see where it all goes. This is the part that I think makes some people a little nervous, but honestly, it's where the real magic happens. Because once you shine a light on your spending habits, you can start making conscious choices that align with your goals.
Exactly. The step often brings those like aha moments, like, wow, I'm spending that much on my daily latte.
Yeah.
But it's not about judgment, it's about awareness. Understanding your spending patterns is the key to unlocking real financial control.
I remember when I first started seriously tracking my expenses, I was shocked to discover how much I was spending on eating out. It wasn't that I was going to, fancy restaurants or anything. It was just those like quick lunches
hmm
and takeout dinners that really added up.
Yeah, it's so common. It's those small, seemingly insignificant expenses that can really sneak up on you.
Yeah, it's like death by 1,000 lattes. Okay, so we've tracked our income, we've listed our expenses. Now what? How do we turn this data into a budget that actually works?
That's where step 3 comes in. And this is distinguishing between needs and wants.
Oh, okay.
This is where you start making conscious decisions about your
Okay.
spending.
This sounds intriguing. So how do we decide what's a need versus a want? Is there like a magic formula?
There isn't like a one-size-fits-all formula, but there are definitely some guiding principles.
Okay.
Needs are those essential expenses that you absolutely can't live without.
Okay.
Housing, food, healthcare, transportation, to get to work. Wants, on the other hand, enhance your life, but they aren't essential for survival.
Right.
So think entertainment, travel, maybe those designer shoes you've had your eye on.
I see, I see. So it's about prioritizing. For example, my morning coffee is non-negotiable. I probably turn into a zombie without it.
Yeah.
But do I need that fancy latte from the coffee shop every day? Probably not. Maybe I can brew a delicious cup at home most days and save that coffee shop treat for a special occasion.
Yeah, exactly. It's about making choices that align with your values and your goals. If you're saving up for a down payment on a house, maybe you're willing to cut back on some wants, like those takeout dinners, to reach that goal faster.
Okay, so we've identified our needs and wants. How do we translate this into an actual budget, with like numbers and stuff?
That's where we move on to step 4. And it's a big one. It's setting spending limits.
Okay, game on.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
All right, let's talk about spending limits. How do we determine what's realistic and what's like setting ourselves up for failure?
One effective approach is the 50-30-20 rule,
Okay.
which suggests allocating 50% of your after-tax income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment.
Okay.
It's a great starting point, but you can adjust those percentages based on your individual circumstances and goals.
That 50-30-20 rule sounds like a great framework. It's clear, it's easy to remember, and adaptable. So I've got our income tracked, expenses lifted, needs and wants sorted, spending limits in place. Are we done? Can we like kick back and relax now?
Not quite. Budgeting isn't like a set it and forget it kind of deal.
Right.
Life is constantly changing, and our budgets need to be flexible enough to adapt with those changes.
Yeah.
That's why the final and arguably most crucial step is reviewing and adjusting your budget regularly.
Okay. So it's a living, breathing document. How often should we be checking in on our budget and making adjustments? Is there like a magic number?
There's no hard and fast rule. But most financial experts recommend reviewing your budget at least monthly.
Okay,
This allows you to track your progress, identify any areas where you might be overspending, and make adjustments as needed.
that makes sense. It's like checking in on your roadmap to see if you're still on track to reach your destination. And if a detour pops up, you adjust your course. This is making budgeting feel way less intimidating and a lot more empowering.
That's the goal. It's not about restriction. It's about awareness and control.
Okay, so we've got the 5 key steps down, but I feel like there's got to be more to the budgeting story,
Yeah.
right? What about those unexpected expenses, those tempting impulse buys? You know those moments where sticking to the plan feels impossible? I'm guessing those are pretty common hurdles on this budgeting journey.
You are absolutely right. There are common pitfalls that can trip people up. But don't worry, we've got you covered. We're about to dive into those tricky spots and explore some savvy strategies to help you navigate them successfully. Stay tuned, because it's about to get really interesting.
Welcome back to our deep dive all about budgeting.
Yes.
So, before the break, we were talking about all the steps to building a budget, but let's be real. Life doesn't always go according to plan.
Oh no.
What happens when those unexpected expenses come up? Or when those tempting impulse buys are like calling your name?
Yeah, that's where understanding common budgeting pitfalls can really make a difference. It's okay, we all fall into these traps from time to time.
We do, we do. So let's talk pitfalls. What's the first one we should watch out for?
I think one of the biggest ones is being unrealistic with your spending limits.
Okay.
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of creating a budget, and setting these really ambitious goals, but then you feel defeated when you inevitably stumble. I've totally been there.
Yeah.
It's like saying you're going to run a marathon tomorrow. When you haven't even jogged around the block in months, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Exactly. So instead of trying to overhaul your entire spending overnight, focus on making those gradual changes. Start by identifying 1 or 2 areas where you can realistically cut back, and then gradually adjust your habits over time.
Slow and steady wins the budgeting race. I like it. What's another common pitfall we should be aware of?
Another one that I see people trip up on is forgetting to account for those irregular expenses,
Okay.
the ones that don't happen every month, but can really throw a wrench in your plans if you're not prepared.
Yes.
Think car maintenance,
Yeah.
annual subscriptions, holiday gifts.
Tell me about it. I once had to replace all 4 tires on my car unexpectedly. And let's just say it was not in the budget.
Oof, yeah.
So how do you suggest we factor those irregular expenses into our budget without, getting caught off guard?
One effective strategy is to create what's called a sinking fund. Okay, sinking fund. I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. How do these sinking funds actually work?
Okay, let's say you're going to need new tires roughly every 3 years, and they'll probably cost around $500. You can calculate how much you need to save each month by dividing that total cost, the $500, by the number of months until you need them, so 36 months. And in this case, you'd only need to set aside about $14 a month.
Wow, that's actually pretty manageable. I can totally see how that would take the sting out of a big expense. Instead of scrambling to come up with $500 all at once, you've got it covered. Sinking funds, that's going in my budgeting toolbox for sure.
Awesome. Remember, a budget is all about being proactive with your money, and sinking funds are a great example of that.
So we've talked about unrealistic spending limits and those sneaky irregular expenses. What other budgeting booby traps should we have on our radar?
One more that I think often gets overlooked is neglecting to actually track your spending consistently. It's easy to kind of lose sight of where your money is going if you're not paying attention.
Oh, I used to be so guilty of this. It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed. But tracking every little expense, that just sounds like a recipe for a headache. Is there a way to track our spending without it becoming a full-time job?
Absolutely. There are so many great budgeting apps out there that can simplify this whole process.
Okay.
Many of them can connect directly to your bank accounts
Yeah.
and automatically categorize your transactions, so you don't have to sit there and manually enter every purchase.
I'm all about making things easier.
Right.
So tell me more about these budgeting apps. What are some of the benefits?
Well, besides automating that tracking process, many apps offer features like personalized spending insights, goal-setting tools, even bill payment reminders. They can be a real game changer for staying organized. And on top of your finances.
Okay. I could see how those apps can be really helpful, especially for someone who's new to budgeting or maybe a little tech savvy like me. But what if you're someone who prefers a more hands-on approach? Any tips for the old school budgeters out there?
Even if you prefer pen and paper, the key is to find a system that works for you and stick with it. Whether you use a notebook, a spreadsheet, an envelope system, make it a habit to record your expenses regularly. The more consistent you are, the more aware you become of your spending pattern.
Okay, consistency is key. I hear that. But even with the best laid plans,
Hmm,
and you know all the nifty apps, things don't always go according to plan, right? Life happens.
that does.
So what advice do you have for our listener about staying flexible and adapting their budget when circumstances change?
It's so important to remember that a budget is a living document.
Okay.
It should evolve along with your life, so don't be afraid to make adjustments as needed.
It's not about sticking to the plan no matter what. It's about being adaptable and making smart choices along the way. So what are some scenarios where someone might need to adjust their budget?
There are countless situations where adjustments might be necessary. Maybe you get a raise, and you can allocate more towards savings or investments. Or maybe you experience an unexpected job loss or a medical expense, and you need to temporarily reduce spending in other categories. Life is full of surprises, and your budget should be flexible enough to kind of roll with the punches.
It's all about finding that balance between discipline and flexibility. Okay, so we've covered some common pitfalls, talked about staying flexible, but I think there's one more piece of the budgeting puzzle that we need to address, and it's a big one, the emotional side of money.
Ooh, yeah, you're absolutely right. Our relationship with money is often so intertwined with our emotions, our values, even like our past experiences.
Totally. Yeah, sometimes I find myself making impulse purchases when I'm stressed or feeling down. It's like retail therapy, but it never really solves the problem, and it usually just adds to my financial stress in the long run.
Yeah, that's really common. It's so important to be aware of your emotional triggers when it comes to spending. So, think about what situations or feelings make you more likely to overspend. Once you identify those triggers, you can start to develop strategies for managing them in a healthier way.
So it's not just about understanding what we're spending, but why we're spending.
Fascinating. This deep dive is really taking us beyond the numbers and into the psychology of spending.
Exactly, by becoming more mindful of our emotional triggers and developing healthy coping mechanisms, we can make more conscious and intentional choices about our money.
Okay, this is all making so much sense. We've covered the 5 steps to building a budget, common pitfalls to avoid, the importance of flexibility and adaptation, and now the emotional side of money. We've learned about syncing funds, budgeting apps. Phew, it's a lot to take in, but I think it's so incredibly valuable for anyone who's ready to take control of their finances and achieve their financial goals.
Absolutely, knowledge is power, and understanding the ins and outs of budgeting is a key step towards financial empowerment. So now that we've laid all this groundwork, let's explore some specific tools and resources that can help our listener put all this knowledge into action and start building a budget that actually works for them. Stay tuned, because we've got some great tips coming up in the final part of our deep dive. All right, we're back for the final part of our budgeting deep dive.
Yes.
We've covered so much, from, the basics of actually building a budget to the psychology of spending. But now let's get practical. Let's talk about tools and resources that can make this whole process easier. And maybe even, dare I say, enjoyable.
Ooh, enjoyable. I
Yeah.
like that. There really is a whole ecosystem of support out there just waiting to be tapped into.
Right.
So whether you are a tech enthusiast or prefer a more hands-on approach, there are tools and resources to fit every style and comfort level.
Okay, I'm picturing a budgeting toolkit full of shiny gadgets and gizmos. Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with budgeting apps. They've become incredibly popular, and for good reason. They can connect to your bank accounts, track your spending automatically, categorize your transactions, even offer personalized insights.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was like a budgeting app skeptic at first. I thought, can an app really make that much of a difference? But then I tried one, and honestly, it was a game changer.
I know, right?
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it took all the tedious work out of tracking my spending,
Yeah.
and it helped me see my financial habits in a whole new light.
Yeah, that's the beauty of technology, right? It can automate those mundane tasks and free up your time and energy to focus on the bigger picture.
Okay, so what if apps aren't really my thing? What are some alternatives for people who prefer a more hands-on approach?
There are tons of online budgeting tools and templates available, many of them for free.
Awesome.
So you can find budget calculators, worksheets, even sample budgets that you can customize to fit your own needs.
I love that there are options for everyone, whether you're a spreadsheet whiz, or you're a pen and paper enthusiast, or an app aficionado. There's a budgeting tool out there waiting to be your new best friend.
Exactly.
Okay, but what if you're looking for more like personalized guidance, someone
Yeah.
to help you navigate those like tricky financial decisions and hold you accountable along the way?
Yeah, in that case, a financial advisor can be incredibly valuable.
Okay.
They can provide expert advice tailored to your unique situation, help you develop a comprehensive financial plan, and answer any questions you have about budgeting, saving, investing, the whole 9 yards.
It's like having a financial coach in your corner,
Mm.
cheering you on and helping you stay on track.
Sure.
But I think sometimes people hesitate to reach out to a financial advisor because they think it's only for like the super wealthy. But that's not true at all, right?
No, absolutely not. Financial advisors work with people from all walks of life, all income levels. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by your finances or just want some guidance and support, don't hesitate to reach out to a qualified professional.
Okay, so we've got apps, online tools, financial advisors. Are there any other resources we should mention? What about those online communities and forums that are dedicated to personal finance? I've heard those can be really helpful.
Oh, for sure. Online communities can be fantastic resources for connecting with other people who are on a similar financial journey.
Yeah.
They offer a space to share tips, ask questions, get support, celebrate wins. It's a great reminder that you are not alone in this after all.
Like a virtual support group for your finances. I love that.
Okay.
Okay, so we've really explored a whole toolbox full of budgeting resources,
Yeah.
apps, online tools, financial advisors, online communities. It's inspiring to know that there's so much support out there for anyone who wants to take control of their finances.
And that's exactly the point. Budgeting doesn't have to be a solo mission. There are resources available to guide you every step of the way.
Amazing. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you want to leave with our listener?
I want to remind everyone that budgeting is not about deprivation or restriction. It's about empowerment. It's about making conscious choices about your money so you can live a life that aligns with your values and your goals.
So well said. It's about creating that roadmap to financial freedom, one that allows you to achieve your dreams, big and small. And remember, you don't have to do it